Hello, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Let's play chess. A game from yesterday. That went really well. I'll play. Let the machine play it through, and then we'll play some live chess. All right. Uh, there it is. Okay, what are we thinking here? Oh, let's do an analysis of this game. This has started. I'll do a review to start. I played accurately, so I'm glad for that. My opponent played accurately enough, so it was mostly just a early contested, but not crazy early contested game. And then let's see, we'll get into more detail. So this is the Russian game, sometimes called the Petrov defense. Black responds symmetrically to knight f3. With knight e5, kicking the knight with the d6 by moving your pawn to d6 is very important. This allows a reset back to f3. However, my opponent here chose a sort of a sacrifice, not a very good sacrifice, but a sacrifice nonetheless. It's not a bad sacrifice. It's kind of in between. Look, I'm going to capture the knight, and so this is the board my opponent was hoping for, but I have a one pawn advantage in material, and white has only the check on c4 to show for it, which I can block. Apparently it's not the right move, and I'll make a note of this so it doesn't happen again. d5. Torch shows is quite right. Sets the pawn off center to capture, because if the bishop captures, then it's knight captures, pawn captures, queen captures, and white has now a 2-point material lead with just superior control of the board. So I missed that. We want to make a note of that. d5 is definitely the best move here. It's early enough in the game that we make a note of these things. Should this same idea resurface, we play d5 next time. Bishop to e6, blocking the attack, and then the trade on e6 is both best move and a move that puts white into a position where, frankly, he does not have, he, she, or they do not have enough for the king displacement. The king's been displaced from e8 and will not castle this game, but at the cost of a full pawn. d3, and the knights develop. Queen comes into play. I mean, this is a good square for the queen, and we might want to see earlier knight development, like to c3. There's a way to play bishop g5, and I think my opponent arrives at these moves, especially bishop g5 in a little bit later. But this pin on the f6 knight could be pretty bad for black. I mean, maybe we push back with just h6 right away, but are we making the structure around black's king even weaker if he's going to retreat towards a kingside castle by hand? I don't know. It's not clear. It's not that clear. Overall, yeah, it was a queen to f3, and I think the move I played, knight d4, didn't take advantage of it. Torch wants d5. Again, d5 to open the center with my king already insanely open in the center, perhaps with the idea of just that, make white's king also open and in the center, while you still can't be. White gets a castle in, and black's lack of king safety is going to be very, very serious. I played for this move, and I'm trying to play for these less often. You know, knight to d4. I know there's a counter move. There's a good counter move to it. Queen d1 just stifles this whole attack. On the one hand, he's very advanced and he can be made into a knight on an outpost, and on the other hand, c3 kicks him once and for all without all that much to do about it. The bishop can come to e3 to trade equal value material with all that not all that much to do about it. The knight can go to a3 and in some variations b4. That's a little bit less clear. Maybe to d2 and then to b3 to trade equal value of material. But it's hard to get out of the practice of saying, well, maybe he'll, just shimmy over to g3 for no reason, and then I'll play knight takes c2, check, and win at least the exchange on a1. What do I want to say? This is the same thing I would say to a pupil of mine. You got to avoid these moves, and I'm saying it to me. This is to say, like, we all make these moves. Like, what if I get 2 moves in a row and it's check, and then I get the rook? No. If there's a counter move, you got to look for what I recommend. If you're looking for a tactical hit, like knight to d4, hitting at the queen, and then maybe this fork, and there's a counter move, does the position after the move serve your strategic benefit anyway? And if it does, then do it. If not, we can't just continue. In this situation, more gravity. Jordan cannot continue to rely on maybe my opponent will just mess this up. So it's something I'm struggling with in my game. On the other hand, it's a blitz game of online chess, and my king's out in the open. Maybe we need to score some material, but also make the game more chaotic so I don't just get squeezed by superior piece placement and an unsafe king. Anyway, one way or the other, I played knight to d4. The queen didn't move to the best spot. So in that, while it's online chess and it's blitz and all that, she didn't move to the spot I had thought she would to block it. But I am in check. So there's more balls in the air now. Can I escape the check and renew the attack? Is there knight to a3? I had graphed all these different ways the knight would have to go to. No, just knight to a3 on its own does it. And the bishop that sometimes lops off that knight is blocked by a pawn on d6. So knight to a3. I would have played it. It's technically an inaccuracy, but it saves from the fork. And yeah, note too that if white wants to just castle and have a safe king and avoid the fork, he still loses the rook and a pawn with knight takes c2, because this rook is not just forkable, trapped until at least knight a3 or some other move like a4, a3, whatever it is. Obviously, whatever move that would free that rook. All right, so we're kind of dealing with the board as it is after this risk, knight to d4. It worked out, so it can't be all that bad. I played the move pawn to d5. And with pawn to c3, white is saying quite directly, we don't like you on our side of the board. You are dangerous. And so I lopped off the knight on a3. Recaptures is almost for certain. Recaptures with the pawn against the bishop, then boom. Then the fork is on, and black is doing very well. But no, my opponent played the accurate move, which was pawn takes d4. I'm looking at this board, and I'm saying I don't have any kind of material advantage, but also, maybe my piece is a little more active, and I have the 1 point in material. I do have a material advantage. Sorry, I said I don't have any material advantage, but I do. I have a one pawn advantage, and so I threw this check here. Just for one part, if there's an equal trade of pieces on d2, then I've ruined white's castling prospects. But that doesn't really matter. He's not all that assailable. Good word. It means he can't be attacked. He's not all that assailable. He can't be attacked on d2, and the rooks are connected. So, well, just probably, I think for white to maybe develop the bishop to d2 makes sense. You see that torch finds bishop to d2 not a great move for white. So king to d1. I think doesn't black pick up an extra pawn in the center here? And with the bishop protecting on d4, we're just picking up another pawn. Even if this pawn is captured, which frankly it's not all too easy to capture this pawn. So now I feel like I'm back on board with what torch indicates, what torch 4 indicates here. Now I feel black is doing very, very well. Right, some of these aggressive moves, one-off aggressive moves or one-shot aggressive moves, like rook to c1, can just be met easily. c6. I hope that's what I played. Oh, I didn't play that. Well, yeah, okay, because d2 is kind of making things more complicated. I wouldn't play d2 again, though. It worked out. The issue with d2 is the pawn on d3 is pretty darn difficult. Like I said, pretty darn difficult to get at. Anyway, the queen could go to f5 and then capture on d3. That's the clearest. That's the clearest path. That's like moderately clear. The other paths are arm twistingly out of the way. And the one with the rook going to c3 doesn't work altogether. So maybe in light of how elusive the d3 pawn is, I might just keep him there. If I were to play the position again. Let's try that. See if I can beat even the computer on its strongest level, but with a huge lead to start. I have a huge lead to start. I want to see if I can do in the computer with that. So I think rook to e8 makes sense. And we're going to try to get material. This is there. Just trying to get that d3 pawn. The computer's trying to get the d3 pawn. Let's make it dynamic then. I think we have it. We have a technical win here. It's not gonna be easy because this pawn is indeed now doomed. The bishop has no way to continue to hold that pawn. So we're gonna put our start putting pawns on light squares here. That last move was wrong. I knew that was wrong. Let's try to trade. Okay, got the trade. And yeah, so g5's an inaccuracy because h4 is just better. one way to do this would be bishop takes e5. Then you sort of push the decoy to catch white's attention. And, sooner or later, black is just going to overrun the position here. All right. So that was from here, but with an alternate path. I call them sometimes alternate path. Rook to c1. In the game, however, I played pawn to d2, which is also a principled move and not a bad one. Not the greatest, but not the worst. I'm trying to just, really get in white's face. And I thought maybe if bishop takes d2, that bishop takes d2, king takes d2, leaves it with black's turn to move, but queen takes d4 check, and black is doing very well in that line. My opponent was hip to that, played knight to c2. It was a good move. Got to, somehow overpower black on the d2 square, and in response, I just developed my h8 rook to e8, and in some versions, in some lines, this bishop ever moves, maybe for the pin on g5, then you could try to get a trade of material on e1. Rook takes e1, pawn takes e1 equals queen check, or is it actually checkmate? That'd be a good way to queen and checkmate. You could even make fun and make a rook out of the piece when you checkmate there. How often do you rook and checkmate? So I'm actually going to force white's hand a bit here to g5, and then the mate is on e1 with check. There's the check, and now we're going to rook with mate. I don't think I've done that before. If by promoting to rook has ever been a checkmate before for me. Don't we love firsts? Okay, so back to the game as it was. My opponent picked up on this scheme or idea of using the queenside pawns to make my bishop not out of play, a little less active, and then pushed all the way to b6, where the pawn on d2 can be picked up, but can be picked up cleanly without a trade of material to follow. So I thought that was wise. This is a strong play here by my opponent, Wang Yungjia, and I played bishop to b6, of course, here, rather than lose the piece. A rook to c4. I don't like rook to c4, mostly because I think white is probably best playing rook takes d2. I mean, how long can you stare this? How long can this staring match last? Or, Torch likes bishop takes d2. What's wrong with rook takes d2? Okay, so rook takes d2 is good, but not great. And white is doing so poorly anyway. But, I thought that rook to c4 was not horrible, but I don't know. It didn't seem good. Mostly the counter move. What I was talking about before with me, and I was going to make the fork here on black's camp. But the counter move here for black is strong. The counter move here for black is strong. Queen to d5, and we're poking at a loose piece. The queen's now way more active than before. Cost white another move to go to the square they could have moved to in the first place. This I like. Rook d2, because it makes things more complicated. It's not the best move. Torch knows that, but from a human perspective, the game is more complicated to you. Force the possibility of human error. I think technically maybe white should capture with the bishop, but there's no dynamic way for black to mess it up after that. So rook takes d2 is stronger than in a human sense. Putting two pieces against my d4 pawn, which is protected once and only once, and that once by royalty. So I like this. I like rook to d2 here. Strong move. I did find a way out, giving the check, and then some pieces begin to swap themselves. And sometimes you'll use, in this type of game, the threat of capturing yet another pawn as a reason to force your opponent to swap pieces. It's a principle of two weaknesses. You either lose the pawn or you swap equal value pieces. As the aggressor, that's good for you, as the defender, that's bad for you. As the aggressor, that's good for you. As the defender, that's bad for you. And black is just picking up a lot of pawns and now has a very large material advantage. Queen to g4 check promises a queen trade, and from here it's really lights out with black in complete control. Rook to e4, forcing our king out of the way, and I'm very glad to swap pawn and rook for knight and rook on e3, because this resulting endgame is won. If you want to know what's going on in this endgame, there are resources on chess.com. Daniel Wrench's Rook and Pawn endgames, and Daniel Wrench's King and Pawn endgames. Watch King and Pawn endgames, know it, and then watch Rook and Pawn endgames and know it. International Master Wrench shows in a very clear way a lot of endgames that will help you very often in your actual regular play. It's very practical, pragmatic, and accurate coaching and teaching and advice giving that International Master Wrench shows. King and Pawn endgames first, and then Rook and Pawn endgames. Alright, so we transfer to this one endgame, and the idea is just on both flanks. White cannot deal with black's plan to remove white's last pawn and promote on the queen side, while also defending against black's queen side ambitions on the A file to promote. Far too stretched is that king. All right, that's good. I think that's it, my friends. We have it's almost it. We have the same game, and then I just show out I showed the game all the way through to checkmate. We're interested in the accuracy scores, good accuracy scores. So I feel good. I played a strong game, and I felt my opponent played a strong game too there. Definitely sure of that. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Have a great night.